Two fake HOA cops rolled onto Ryan Callahan's private dock and tried to seize his jet ski like they owned the water. They'd been running the same scam on retirees all over the bay, flashing cheap badges and faking authority. But this time, their target was a county harbor security officer, with Coast Guard friends and surveillance on standby. Just wait until you hear how fast their bluff collapsed and how justice rolled in like a wave. It started like any other Saturday morning, sunlight glinting off the bay, the hum of distant boats, and the smell of salt air rising with the breeze. Ryan Callahan, still in his t-shirt and coffee in hand, stepped onto the back porch of his cedar-shingled home. He planned to take his jet ski out before the weekend crowd thickened, clear his head, ride the water a bit. But something felt off. Down at the end of his private dock, two unfamiliar men in matching navy polos were pacing around his Yamaha FX cruiser. One of them was circling it with a phone, snapping photos from multiple angles. The other had a clipboard in hand and was jotting down notes like he was inventorying warehouse stock. Ryan froze for a second, mid-sip. That wasn't normal. He set the mug down and headed toward the dock, boots thudding against the wooden planks. As he approached, the man with the clipboard casually peeled a bright orange sticker from his folder and slapped it right on the hull of the jet ski, centered and crooked, as if he'd done it 100 times before. It read, in bold block letters, "Seized, HOA enforcement." Ryan's expression didn't change, but inside, something locked up, tight. "Excuse me," he said, voice even, but firm. "Can I help you gentlemen with something?" The shorter man turned around, stepping slightly forward, badge glinting from his belt. "HOA Compliance Task Force," he said crisply. "This watercraft is in violation of dock regulations. No signage, improper tie-off, and unsecured fuel line. Under Article 7, we're impounding it for inspection." Ryan tilted his head slightly. "Article 7?" he repeated, the words deliberate. There was no Article 7. There wasn't even a functioning HOA that covered waterfront properties in this part of the inlet. The original association had dissolved back in the 80s, buried in paperwork and long forgotten. It certainly never had anything remotely resembling a compliance task force. Ryan's eyes dropped to the badge. It looked official at first, but up close it was wrong. Plastic sheen, off-center emblem, and no serial number. Not even a county name, more like something you'd order from a costume website. Still, the men didn't flinch. The taller one moved around to the back of the dock, already lowering the trailer hitch on their black pickup. His partner began unclipping the jet ski's tie-downs with practiced speed. "You don't have any jurisdiction here," Ryan said flatly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move toward them, just spoke the words like a fact. The taller man smirked without looking up. "We have authority," he said, like it was a game. "If you have a complaint, you're free to file one, after this unit's been properly evaluated at our facility." Ryan felt his pulse shift. A little heavier, a little colder. This wasn't a neighborhood dispute. This wasn't a misfiled regulation or overzealous HOA board. This was a con. They weren't there to enforce anything. They were there to take. And Ryan, who had trained federal units in harbor security drills for over a decade, suddenly understood. These guys had pulled this scam before, maybe many times, and they had no idea who they'd just tried to rip off. He didn't yell, he didn't threaten, he just stood there, eyes locked on the trailer's license plate, memorizing it, because now it was personal. Ryan didn't waste time. Back in his home office, he shut the door, pulled up the local enforcement contact sheet, and tapped in a number from memory. Within seconds, the voice of Lexi Ramirez answered, assistant harbor master and longtime friend, someone who knew the dock registry better than anyone in the county. "Lexi, it's Ryan. Need a quick check on something strange," he said, already typing up a summary of the incident. He gave her a rundown, two men posing as an HOA task force, trying to seize his jet ski under a bogus article. Lexi didn't interrupt. She just listened carefully, then paused. "There's no HOA enforcement body on that inlet, Ryan," she said flatly, "and there hasn't been for years. At most, you've got a civic newsletter and a Facebook group run by a woman named Denise who hosts potlucks." That much he'd expected, But what she said next stopped him cold. "You're the third case I've heard about this month," she added quietly. "Same description. Matching polos, clipboards, cheap-looking badge. One guy talks fast. The other handles the equipment. They took a sail dinghy off a widow near Harbor Lane last week. She thought it was her fault for not knowing the rules." Ryan leaned back in his chair, the silence settling heavy between them. This wasn't an isolated stunt. It was a pattern. They were exploiting gaps in oversight, choosing quiet, older neighborhoods where people didn't have the knowledge or strength to push back. Communities where a confident tone and fake badge could override confusion, fear, or shame. Lexi even said one couple offered to pay a release fee just to avoid trouble. The scam wasn't just about theft, it was psychological. Ryan's chest tightened. He could practically see it. These two pulling up to another dock next weekend, laughing as they hooked someone else's boat to their trailer. Some veteran's fishing rig, some retiree's only hobby. Gone in 10 minutes under the illusion of law. They weren't enforcers. They were predators with paperwork and charm. And worst of all, they thought they could get away with it. They thought Ryan was just another middle-aged dock owner with no teeth, no fight, and no friends in the right places. They didn't know about the security drills, didn't know he ran coordinated exercises with the Coast Guard and trained new recruits on threat protocols. They hadn't just crossed a legal line, they'd stepped into the wrong harbor and marked the wrong man. Ryan didn't raise his voice when he called Lexi back. He just said 5 words. "Let's log this as a threat." Ryan wasn't impulsive. He didn't believe in charging into conflict just because he was angry, especially when dealing with people bold enough to impersonate authority. But that didn't mean he was going to let them walk away. Instead of reaching for confrontation, he reached for structure and backup. He made one phone call to Commander Raul Torres, the officer in charge of the local Coast Guard detachment, and a man Ryan had worked with for nearly a decade on joint harbor readiness drills. "Raul," Ryan said plainly, "I need a favor, and I need it quiet." It didn't take much convincing. Torres had heard murmurs of thefts along the waterline. With a few calls, they coordinated a simple but effective plan. This coming Saturday, Ryan's dock would be the site of a sudden training exercise. Coast Guard personnel would be nearby in an unmarked response vessel waiting for Ryan's signal. His own cameras would handle the rest. The trap was set. And Ryan waited. Sure enough, the imposters returned, right on schedule. Same navy polos, same smug confidence. But this time, they came with a bigger trailer and an even bolder attitude. They parked like they belonged, stepped out like they had every right, and didn't even bother knocking. The taller one called out before stepping onto the dock, clipboard in hand. "Still non-compliant," he announced, not even glancing at Ryan. "We warned you. This one's coming with us today." Ryan didn't flinch. He just stood at the top of the ramp, arms crossed, calm as still water. "Funny," he said evenly. "You boys mind showing me that badge again?" They froze for a half second, just long enough. Then came the voice from the water, loud, sharp, unmistakable. "Coast Guard, stand down, hands where we can see them." A response skiff roared up from behind the tree line. Its engine cut as it drifted alongside the dock, and then a full team of uniformed officers swept up the planks with practiced speed. In under 10 seconds, the illusion of authority the imposters had built crumbled like wet paper. The shorter man raised his hands, frozen. The taller one tried to run, vaulting over a mooring line toward the brush, but was intercepted before he made it 5 feet. They had no real ID, no charter, no legal right to touch so much as a dock cleat. Their trailer? Registered to a dissolved shell company based in Nevada with no operating address. Their uniforms? Ordered online with no oversight. Their badges? Shipped in bulk from a novelty supplier in Texas. And Ryan? He had everything, captured from 3 different camera angles with synced timestamps and audio. By the time the team finished collecting statements, there was no debate left about what had happened. These men hadn't made a mistake. They'd made a business out of pretending to be the law. And this time, they picked the wrong dock. in the wrong county, under the watch of the wrong man. Ryan handed over his footage and signed the incident log, his voice calm and steady. "This wasn't a mistake," he said quietly to Torres. "This was organized theft, and I want it on record that they targeted vulnerable communities." The commander nodded. "It's already in the file." As the skiff pulled away with the suspects cuffed and silent, Ryan stood alone on the dock, looking out over the water. His anger hadn't faded. It had simply finished its job. The aftermath wasn't a slow burn. It was a controlled detonation. Within 48 hours, the two men were formally charged with a laundry list of offenses: impersonating law enforcement, criminal trespass, fraud, attempted grand theft, and unlawful use of identification. Investigators uncovered a paper trail that stretched back months: fake violations, coerced payments, and missing boats traced to dockside pickups, just like Ryan's. But Ryan's case was different. It wasn't just a report. It was evidence, documented, time-stamped, and backed by the Coast Guard itself, and it cracked the entire operation wide open. Authorities confirmed at least $200,000 worth of stolen watercraft across 3 counties taken from retirees, widows, and seasonal homeowners too confused or intimidated to push back. With Ryan's footage, law enforcement not only had faces, they had patterns, methods, and a full playbook. Lexi, ever the quiet tech wizard, clipped together a 1-minute highlight reel from the Coast Guard's body cam footage: the confrontation, the arrest, the moment Ryan asked to see that badge again. She posted it to her boating group's page under a title that said everything. Fake HOA cops tried to seize a jet ski, didn't know he ran harbor security. The clip blew up overnight. Comments poured in. Dock owners from across the state recognized the men. One woman said she'd been ready to hand over a check. Another had filed an insurance claim, believing her son's fishing boat had been legally impounded. By the 3rd day, the video had over 1 million views. Ryan didn't care much for attention, but he couldn't stop the neighborhood from buzzing. At the next marina meeting, someone handed him a mug with "The Admiral" printed in bold letters. Another neighbor brought him a hand-painted sign for the dock: Harbor Security HQ. He laughed it off, but a part of him, deep down, felt a quiet pride. Because this wasn't about a stolen jet ski. It was about drawing a line. These guys hadn't just trespassed on his property. They'd preyed on the quiet, the elderly, the trusting. They'd weaponized confusion and fake authority to take what wasn't theirs. But they picked the wrong dock to finish their scam. Ryan didn't need a uniform to defend his community. He just needed one Saturday, a few friends in the right places, and the patience to let the tide come in. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive with sirens or headlines. Sometimes it shows up with perfect timing and drags the liars out with the current.